This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center. Your stem cells, your health, your life. And we're back again.
Okay, this is one of my favorite people in history because when you talk about you can't make up this life. Henry Morton Stanley, and there's a wonderful biography. I don't remember the guy that wrote it, but it's a wonderful biography that's that big on Stanley. The adventurer, he found Dr. Livingstone, and that's why most people know him today. But Henry Morton Stanley, I think, was actually born in Wales. He comes to America. He winds up in the American Civil War, so he's in the Confederate Army. He gets captured, sent to a Yankee prison, and they did what they called galvanizing Yankees. So they basically come in, if you'll join the Union Army, you can get out of prison, and we'll send you to fight somewhere different. Mostly they were sent out west. And so they were called galvanized. Well, he became a galvanized Yankee. He then wound up in the Union Navy. And sources say he may be the only man to serve in both the Confederate Army, the Union Army, and the Union Navy. You really can't make this stuff up. And then he had a career as a journalist, and that's where we pick him up in Kansas. But if there were a historic marker for every place Henry Morton Stanley was, you couldn't turn around in the world without bumping into the marker where Henry Morton Stanley was. Huh. And one of my favorite stories about him, other than the one we're going to share with you, there was Bill Thompson shot, stabbed, and scalped up on the UP line in Southern Nebraska. And he is the only survivor of this attack, picks up his scalp, walks back to Plum Creek Station, 7 or 8 miles, and then takes a train to Omaha trying to find a doctor to reattach his scalp. Who sees him at the train station? Henry Morton Stanley. And it's like, really? I mean, the man was everywhere, everywhere. And he's got a really cool Kansas connection that we're going to tell you about right now. Dr. Livingstone, I presume. Noted explorer Henry Morton Stanley uttered these words in 1871. He had undertaken an expedition to relieve Dr. David Livingstone, who was searching for the source of the Nile. He had not been heard from since his departure in 1866. Stanley's exploration was financed by the New York Herald. It might have been high adventure, but it was grueling travel. During the 700-mile trek through the tropical forest, his thoroughbred stallion died within a few days after a bite from a tsetse fly. Many of his porters deserted, and the rest were decimated by tropical diseases. Nonetheless, Stanley found Livingstone in November of 1871 in present-day Tanzania, and the two entered the realm of legend. Only 4 years earlier, Stanley had found himself in another landscape, the vast and dangerous high plains of Kansas. Stanley was a correspondent for the Missouri Democrat newspaper in St. Louis to cover the Medicine Lodge Peace Treaty. There was, in fact, a true press corps covering the event. He was already a veteran reporter, having spent considerable time on the plains covering military operations. Of particular note is this encounter with the Kiowa chief Satanta. A number of Indians walked in, led by the redoubtable Satanta himself. Satanta seemed beside himself with joy on recognizing your correspondent, and gave him a gigantic bear's hug. Other members of the press looked upon him with some awe, having heard so much of his ferocity and boldness. Stanley's reports are an important piece of this momentous gathering. His exploits made him a household name throughout the world. But next time you hear the words, Dr. Livingstone, I presume, you might mention that before he met Livingstone, he met Satanta of the Kiowa Nation, and that Satanta gave him a bear hug. There is no mention that Dr. Livingstone was as glad to see him.
Clyde Sutton, Nest City, Kansas. Lived on this place all my life. About a year and a half ago, got to where I couldn't saddle a horse. The pain was terrible. Read about stem cell. First it wasn't for me, then they started doing neck and back. Before I went down to Manhattan, pain I was having from my neck down to my hand was curling my hand back. Some people had thought I almost had a stroke, and my shoulder had drawn up. I couldn't lift, I couldn't sleep, I really couldn't do anything, and was scheduled to be operated on, but was scared of the knife, I guess. Went and had it done. As you can see, I saddled a horse. I'm still building fence. Love to shoot a shotgun rifle, and I'm able to participate, not like I used to, but nevertheless I can do the things I used to do. And I want to personally thank the doctors, nurses, staff at Kansas Regenerative Medicine for the opportunity they give me to have my life back again.